Well, hello everybody. I just wanted to make a quick video. It's been forever. So to my daughter and anybody that is around, I would like to say hello. But I heard something very humorous the other day. Oh, by the way, this is Sabbath, August 3rd, 2024. So I just want to say that, interestingly, I heard Doug Batchelor create this very interesting example about grace and about justice and mercy. And he equated it to an experience he had driving his car. And this is what happened. Now, with grace, we know justice is when we get what we deserve. Mercy is when we do not get what we deserve. And grace is when we get what we don't deserve. Now, interestingly, a lot of religions think that since we're under grace, we actually could go about behaving in ways that are not appropriate for a Christian to behave. It kind of gives us, in their opinions, a license to not act properly. But that's not the case. All because there's grace. Paul says, what then? Should we sin that grace may abound? Heaven forbid, he says. We don't want to sin so that grace there'll be more of it, like having to use an eraser all the time from a pencil. No, he says, shall we continue to sin that grace may flourish? Well, no, he says, heaven forbid. And here's an example that I thought was humorous and clever on Doug Batchelor's part of Amazing Facts. Okay, so he talks about driving down the road, and he doesn't keep his eye on the speedometer. And before long, he sees lights behind him, and we're talking about the law and how the law is actually meant not to rob us of our freedoms, but to protect us. The law protects us. They don't want you to drive too fast. And on a mountain road, when you're up in the mountains, they have those guardrails that should you make a mistake, you don't go flying off the mountain. So the law is not a restrictive medium. It's actually a liberating. The 10 Commandments are divided into 4 groups. The first 4 are regarding how you worship the Lord. You know that he doesn't want idols. He wants you to love him with all his heart. He wants you to observe the 4th commandment, Sabbath, Saturday. But the last 6 are regarding civil laws. Don't steal, don't cheat on your wife, don't murder your neighbor, don't lie. So the first 4 commandments, we are not to impose. We are not to impose how you're supposed to live and believe and think and worship. The last 6 we must maintain for civil safety and for properness, to maintain a civil society. Okay, so here it is. Now, when we're driving on the road, oh, hi, daughter. It's been a long time, honey, and here's finally a video. When we're driving down the road, and by chance we are within the speed limit, the law has no jurisdiction over us. The law has we are free of the law. Just like if you live a sinless life, the law has no impact on you whatsoever. But if you are driving your car, and let's say it's 50 miles an hour, and I'll exaggerate, let's say you're going 70, now you've broken the law. So now you're under the law. Prior to that, if you were doing 50, you could just wave at the police officers. They have no jurisdiction over you. They have no authority over you whatsoever until the law gets broken. Then they do. Now, he made this great example. So he's driving down the road, and he realizes that there's a police officer, and his lights are on. He looks at his speedometer. He sees he's well over the speed limit. So he pulls over, and the police officer walks up to him. And I think, yes, this was a true story. That's right. But he extends it to really demonstrate the concept of grace. So the police officer walks over, and he says, did you realize that you were going over the speed limit? And Doug says, oh, you know what, officer, I'll tell you the truth. I just came off the highway where it was 70 miles an hour. I did not realize that I had actually broken the law. I didn't watch my speedometer. He says, I'm so sorry. Would you please consider being merciful? And the officer said, I'll be right back. So Doug's sitting there waiting for the officer to return, and it's up to the officer if he wants to be merciful and show grace towards Doug, because he had broken the law. He was under the law. And him being a proprietor of the law, he makes the determination whether or not he'll get a ticket or he'll get a warning or he'll just get a verbal drive slower. So the police officer comes over and he says, okay, I'm going to write you a warning, but please do your best to slow down. And Doug says this, he says, and I thought it was so funny. He said, well, he said, wow, he's being merciful, but really he's under grace. And then Doug says, if it was really grace, he would have written the ticket and he would have paid for it. You know how Jesus, we're under the law, we've broken the law, so we're under the law, all of us. And Jesus, who did not break the law, he demonstrated grace by dying on our behalf. And he said, if this was grace, and it was actually, the police officer would have paid the ticket, but he didn't. So remember, the current Christian world thinks we're under grace, so we could go ahead and live ungodly lives. We can do that. But he makes this, and this is where it gets humorous. The police officer says, okay, I'm going to give you a warning. And Doug says, thank you so much. Doug Batcher, my favorite preacher, by the way. 30 years. I've learned so much from Amazing Facts, Seventh-day Adventist. But anyway, I want to get back. So Doug says, well, now that I'm under grace, do I say, thank you, officer, and I'm under grace. So he says, do I, put it into second gear and pop the clutch and peel out, spreading dirt all over the top of his hood, spraying him with dust and rocks and zigzagging back onto the highway, flying like crazy because I'm under grace. Like a lot of the Christian world thinks, we're under grace so we can continue to sin and do those cherished sins that we should not do. We should strive not to do. That's what sanctification is about. Justification is when you crawl on your belly to the Lord and say, I'm sorry. I'm a mess. I don't deserve mercy, but I'm asking for it. The Lord says, you are forgiven. That's justification. That's the first step. But the real adventure to a Christian life is when you strive towards sanctification. For example, Job, Moses, Joseph, people I really admire. Moses, did I already say Moses? Abraham. Anyway, Daniel, they strove for spiritual perfection. They fell short. But that's the adventure. When you have been justified and you realize that you're actually a little dirty, you strive to live a godly life. And that's the adventure of Christianity. So I wanted to say, and I have a new friend. Her name is Cheryl. Hello, Cheryl. Anyway, so I wanted to say that, does he peel out and just spray the cop with dirt and dust and, scratch up his hood and chip his windshield? He said, no, he's under grace, but he doesn't go flying out of there. No, what he says he does, he adjusts his mirrors. He looks out of both mirrors and wait till there's nobody coming from behind him for at least a mile before he slowly pulls out. And then he slowly pulls away and he starts to drive down the road, very safe and happy, very happy. He's no longer under the law. He was forgiven. He was shown grace, or actually mercy. So that's the point. Now, in today's times, a lot of Christians think grace is a Band-Aid. It's a coverall. forgive me, but for our Catholic friends, say 5 Hail Marys and then go out and continue sinning and doing evil things. That's why a lot of the mobsters are Catholics. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about Catholics. The power is very questionable, because they do exactly the opposite of what the Bible says in many ways. But there'll be many Catholics in heaven, probably more Catholics than anyone else, simply because there's simply more of them. But so we do not say 5 Hail Marys, or once we're under grace, like Paul says, shall we continue to sin that grace may abound? No, heaven forbid. So we do not go flying down the road at 90 miles an hour because I'm under grace. Yeah. No, we don't do that. We take it seriously. We've been forgiven that ticket. It saved us a lot of money, and our insurance is not impacted. So, daughter and friends, it's been a long time since I've made a video. Wonderful changes have occurred in my life recently. Anybody who's interested, you could always inquire privately, and I will tell you. But as for you, daughter, we don't speak very often, but I know we're very close, and I want to tell you that I love you very much. So even though we're under grace, let's not abuse that grace. We have an obligation to live godly lives and to strive towards godliness, like a Job or a Joseph or an Isaiah is the flavor of life. I love all of you. Some of you I've not spoken to in forever. And to any strangers who come along, are we really strangers? To any friends I haven't met, I wanted to say hello. And to Cheryl, I'm hoping that you're doing well with the 2 little children. Just a friend, a very nice lady in her 30s, just a young person that we've befriended each other. And I'm very happy. For anybody that sees this, welcome, and thank you for spending time with me, Henry. God bless you all, and bye-bye. I always miss the button.